Good evening. My name is Camille Peterson, and I'd like to talk to you about the Cold War and the information age for intelligence. Michael Warner wrote that at the end of World War II, the USSR had human intelligence superiority over the US. Glenn Hadstead confirmed that the failure of US human intelligence during the Cold War competition was the open door to the emphasis in U.S. intelligence technological surveillance gathering, like signals intelligence and the blossoming satellite reconnaissance, in addition to the space race. But the U.S. system, driven by individual intelligence collectors and their technology silos, were proprietary in nature, so information streams did not merge, provide analysts a total picture with which to advise policymakers. This lack of information sharing between agencies was the beginning of a major flaw in U.S. intelligence that would later be a contributing factor in the 9/11 catastrophe. One of Peter Jackson's obstacles to successful intelligence reared its ugly head in the U.S. intelligence rivalry and politicization. A crucible of long and bitter rivalry is how William Burroughs described the U.S. system created from the struggle between the burgeoning CIA, or Central Intelligence Agency, and the U.S. Air Force for control of the new and immense source of power, satellite reconnaissance, by the end of August 1980. Glenn Hadstead, in his 2007 article, supports William Burroughs' assertion when he writes about when in 1958, Eisenhower gave the fledgling CIA primary responsibility for developing a reconnaissance satellite, but the United States Air Force still continued their satellite research. The U.S. military doctrine that came out of tactical intelligence capabilities during the U.S. involvement in the Vietnam conflict was another transformation that Michael Warner termed a new queen for the West on the strategic chessboard of global intelligence. The technologically based NSA and the foreign intelligence-based CIA, with its human and signals intelligence, did not happen by accident. The U.S. had a World War II war machine infrastructure that post-war continued as a vast, flourishing economic infrastructure where technology was premier. U.S. intelligence gradually gravitated toward the U.S. strength, which was technology in order to combat the USSR in the Cold War. In tandem with American policymaker foresight, much of the role and design for intelligence during the Cold War was driven by the U.S. technology explosion that was in turn driven by the technology advancements and their results. It was a continually domino effect. Michael Warner wrote that the new wealth of satellite images forced the CIA to expand its reconnaissance capability. But how were they going to do that? Technological advances by the USSR, whether technological or otherwise, were also formative elements for the American intelligence system, since we had to stay ahead of our nemesis, as Warner coined the relationship between the two superpowers. American principles also impacted the U.S. intelligence community through congressional oversight, like the 1974 Church Committee meetings that eventually resulted in a permanent oversight intelligence committee. I believe that in order for intelligence to be successful, it must be utilized. And I do think that intelligence did stabilize the Cold War, because even the competition, particularly the space race, involved, gravitated towards some peacetime innovations, with even missile technology being used to launch a payload into space instead of at a global neighbor. Intelligence provided risk reduction for the superpower leaders, even when there was unjustified negative spin, because the leaders were cautious and responsible. The main competition was primarily between two powers who had control. With the current array of nuclear-capable countries and non-state actors, not to mention terrorists, many of them state-sponsored, I do not believe Western intelligence would have been the same success today, even though they are still in a prominent position globally, if not preeminent. As for the Western intelligence Cold War win that did develop from multiple sources, in addition to risk-reducing intelligence, the loss of the Cold War and the downfall of the USSR was primarily ideological. Economically speaking, capitalism won over communism. The traditional poor USSR analytics stemmed from their focus on dissemination of propaganda, rather collecting and analyzing information. This was the result of a core premise that the desired transformation and maintenance of the communist social order justified continual internal espionage on a large scale. This weakened their overall effectiveness since they were spying on two fronts. The Stasi, for example, carefully phrased their economic reports to be in line with Marxist ideology, and blame was always assigned some dubious Western source. No one wanted to be the messenger of bad news, even within the communist organization. But the end of the World War II found a robust US in spite of losses, with private sector rushing to make a profit on the new technologies that continued the Western technology explosion into the Cold War and beyond. What we asked before, what would help the analysis of information that intelligence was collecting? Computers were more capacity and capability were essential to the processing of it. Computers were also integral to the new technology, whether military or not. Finally, the creation of the chip to replace circuitry was the ultimate computer game changer. Michael Warner writes how a consumer market for computers opened up in the late 1970s and exploded in 1981 with the introduction of the IBM PC. I remember buying an Apple Amiga computer in the mid-80s. There was really nothing that could replace the innovation of America during this time period. A CIA analyst wrote, according to Michael Warner, computer networking represents a new communication medium with global reach and quick response time. The World Wide Web had arrived. This was only part of the US economic, industrial, and technological juggernaut into the intelligence information age. Thank you.